We look at why newly signed Baltimore Ravens safety Eddie Jackson is the perfect fit for the team's defense and why he could be the final piece of the team's defense. Well, that and more coming up next year on this bonus episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens. We are a daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, and I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. We're free and available, as always, all podcasting platforms. You can check us out over on YouTube in video form. You can follow along, like the video, subscribe to the channel over there. Also in audio form, you can follow along and subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We are here for you 5 days per week, plus obviously bonus content like today, because a big piece of news ended up dropping yesterday. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn jobs help you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job free. Terms and conditions apply. Well, yesterday did not go quite as expected, in a good way, obviously, as the Ravens signed former Bears safety Eddie Jackson to a one-year deal, officially announced the move. And on today's show, we're going to be talking about why Jackson is a perfect fit, why I believe he is the final piece of this defense, and just what he brings to Baltimore in general. So we went live on the channel yesterday. And also if you're in audio form, we put that out after the fact. But if you want an instant reaction, be sure to check out yesterday's episode. And also we talked with Kaji Ismail about Derrick Henry. So just a jam-packed Ravens content day. But they make a great move here in signing Eddie Jackson. And the thing I started off the live stream with, and I'll start it off here again today, if you've been with me on Locked On Ravens, if you have been an everydayer of this show, if you've heard what I've had to say about team needs, you know that I have been banging the table here for a third safety. I know some people necessarily might have been like, oh, maybe pass rush is more important, offensive line. But I had always kind of figured that third safety was a spot they needed. Darius Washington, Bo Brades, and UC Kane, those were the guys. And while that's great, and I think a lot of those guys have potential, including Darius Washington, who's one of my guys, it would have felt a lot better if they had a veteran. And Eddie Jackson certainly is that. He's 30 years old and someone that has certainly been around the league since coming into it in 2017. Now, his best year was in 2018. I think we are a little far removed from Eddie Jackson here being that type of player. But he's a perfect fit, honestly, for what Baltimore wants to do on the defensive side of the ball. One of the big points here is in replacing Geno Stone. This is at least a one-for-one replacement here with the skill set. Good ball skills. Of course, Eddie Jackson has those. Someone who can be very versatile, play in single high, can send him deep and really not have to worry about it. Now, it's not like there aren't weaknesses in his game. Tackling has certainly slowed down a bit. And actually, I misspoke on the live stream, and I apologize because I meant to talk about Marcus Peters and how, Eddie Jackson is still competitive, even though the tackling might not be there for him. And I accidentally said Marcus Williams instead of Marcus Peters. I meant to say Marcus Peters was the example I used of, a guy maybe taking plays off or not sticking his nose in there. But I accidentally said Marcus Williams. So I apologize. Marcus Williams actually does have a very underrated physical aspect to him and does get his nose involved and all that type of stuff. So again, not what I meant. I misspoke. It was a crazy day yesterday, so I just wanted to, put a disclaimer out there. It is Marcus Peters that did not make an effort on some of those plays, and Marcus Peters did not get his nose in there and make business decisions. But Eddie Jackson doesn't play that way. He doesn't. And to me, the Ravens love those highly competitive guys, even if they have a weakness, even if they do, even if tackling is not their biggest strong suit or another thing, they try and they give it their all. And I think that's kind of why the Ravens-Marcus Peters relationship went kind of sour towards the end. And I think that's why this Eddie Jackson thing could work out, even though I'm sure there will be plays where the tackling just is not there. And to me, though, it's not like you're taking a risk here. I think a lot of people, and when you talk about like the negative reactions to this, which weren't a lot, I think, in general, it was a very positive response. But a lot of people said, well, Eddie Jackson, again, he's not like that 2018, which, by the way, was the best year of his career in 2018. He had 6 interceptions that year, 2 touchdowns, and he had found the end zone 3 times in his first 2 seasons in the league and does have punt return and return experience in general, but has played in 100 games over the course of his career. And it's just, he's been around the block. He's experienced, but you're not asking him to be this starter level safety, right? You have Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams. The whole point of bringing in a third safety here was to not start them. I was on the Justin Simmons train. I loved the idea of Simmons in Baltimore. I thought it would have been great skill set fit, but wasn't perfect, but it fit well enough. And he's such a good player that you would have loved to see him in purple and black, but this move just made more sense. And I think that's why, Simmons would have been awesome, but I think there would have been some question marks about role, question marks about money, obviously. Eddie Jackson, I think, is more willing to slot into a backup role at this point in his career. And backup in today's game is such a fickle term where, especially on defense, guys get snaps regardless of if they're the backup, right? If Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams stay healthy for a full 17 games, which obviously we hope that's what happens, right? We hope that at the end of the day, these two stay healthy and Eddie Jackson is not thrust into a starting role, but it's just good to have the insurance overall of having him available to do that and not having to rely on young guys. That doesn't mean the young guys can't contribute this season, but obviously you just like to have the veteran experience. But the big thing about this move and why it's such a perfect fit for me is it allows the Ravens to move Kyle Hamilton around. And I talked about this on the live show yesterday, and I'll give the Pittsburgh example again, where Pittsburgh was in a bind last season with Minkah Fitzpatrick, where they had lost so many guys to injury and they just didn't have depth. They had to move Minkah Fitzpatrick back into a very restricting, specific role, and that is not how you should utilize a guy like that. And the Ravens are probably going to run into that same problem this season just because they didn't have a bunch of guys they could trust, and it almost limits you in how you can move a guy around. And with Kyle Hamilton, that's when he's at his best. It's at his best when you're able to move him around and put him at the line of scrimmage and just kind of throw offenses off with him. Eddie Jackson allows you to do that. I'm sure we're going to see plenty of 3 safety looks this year with these 3 guys on the field at the same time, with Williams and Stone playing in the back end. Well, not Stone, Williams and Jackson. I'm still in my Geno Stone era, apparently. No, Williams and Jackson obviously playing in the back end. And then you have Kyle Hamilton roaming all around the place. And that, I think, will be even more true this season, because now with Geno Stone gone, with Patrick Queen gone, Clowney, all those defensive losses, there's already so much trust in this youth. Baltimore trusts their youth a lot. We've talked about it pretty much every day on this show now. And I feel like it was good to get another vet in here, and especially one that does have ties to the Ravens like Eddie Jackson does. He played with Derrick Henry and Marlon Humphrey at Alabama, and he played with Roquan Smith in Chicago. Those are already connections there, and that's big. I mean, again, a guy can come in with no connections and be great. There's not anything that says they can't. But it is nice to have the connection already. I'm sure that, Roquan Smith or Humphrey or Henry were vetted maybe on the situation, and we're like, hey, would this be a good fit? And I'm sure that, now he's with the team, obviously the answer is yes. But you get that single high guy, and in the event Marcus Williams goes down, you just feel a lot more comfortable and confident. And even if Hamilton goes down, but here's the thing right there. There's no replacing Kyle Hamilton, right? Marcus Williams is a heck of a player, but that skill set is easier to replace than Kyle Hamilton's skill set. And it's no disrespect to Marcus Williams, right? Again, when he's been healthy and on for this team, he's been great, one of their best defensive players. But the issue is he hasn't been. So you don't want to take that risk, especially running 2 years in a row now where you have seen him go down with a serious injury. We would like to have that depth behind him. So when we were talking about Jamal Adams, and I was just kind of like, he'd be good as a dime backer, but, he's lost so much. Eddie Jackson has not lost nearly as much as Jamal Adams has here. And I do feel like he just slots in perfectly. It's that, and we'll talk about it in the second part of the show, but it's that final piece that the Ravens needed. They could maybe add 1 or 2 more guys, and we'll get to that as well. But now you have Hamilton, you have Williams, you have Eddie Jackson. That secondary in general, if you want to throw the corners in there, Marlon, Brandon Stevens, Nate Wiggins, TJ Tampa, Arthur Millette, that's huge. It's a huge get, and it's a depth piece, right? This is not a guy that's going to play hopefully 90% of snaps. You don't want that right now. You want Hamilton and Williams to be the guys that play the snaps. But in the events, it's the break glass in case of emergency type deal. But it's also him being able to fit a skill set on the field with Hamilton, with Williams, complementing those guys, and him being around the football, having a nose for it, being competitive, and giving them a guy you can roam around there. That's what they needed. That's what they got. They got him on a 1-year deal and got him for cheaper money than probably he was asking for at the beginning of the offseason. And this is what the Ravens do. They wait guys out. They see how markets develop. The safety market was not great in general this offseason. I mean, again, Geno Stone, I think his market was significantly less than we all thought it was going to be. But you make these types of moves around the edges. We saw Baltimore do it last year with Van Noy and Clowney and Millette and Darby and all those guys. This is a very Ravens move, and I think Eric DeCosta and company hit this one out of the park, and Jackson is a perfect fit for what they needed, what they want to do, and how they can utilize both him and his teammates on the defensive side of the ball. Coming up, we'll continue talking about the final piece aspect of this whole thing with Eddie Jackson. Is he the final piece of this Baltimore defense? Could they add anything else? Stay tuned, plenty to get to on the show. First, the show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style. eBay Motors has it covered. With over 122 million parts, your number one ride or die will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guarantee Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts you need, the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items, only exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit, only available to U.S. customers. And the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And for me, I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it was networking, connecting with people, finding jobs. LinkedIn is the place to be. Plus, LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Push a job for free on LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. Let's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to push a job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're back for a second segment of Locked On Ravens here on Saturday. A bonus episode for you this weekend. Kevin Allstreicher still here with you. Thank you again for tuning in today and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and a part of your weekend. Be sure to subscribe video form and audio form for your daily Ravens coverage fix. By the way, vets report to training camp today. We have officially made it. It is exciting, and we are almost completely back to football season. We're going to have another bonus episode tomorrow, more training camp centric. We'll still have Eddie Jackson talk in that, but right now today we're focusing on Eddie Jackson as that move happened yesterday afternoon. And again, crazy and hectic, right around 3:30-ish in the afternoon, that move was reported. And then I think a couple hours later, the Ravens made it official. So with Jackson, is he the final piece of this defense? I personally say yes. I do think Eddie Jackson is the final piece of this defense because let's just go, first of all, we can talk about the secondary, and I put out this tweet yesterday. I read it off on the live stream as well. I'll read it off here again. I'll pull it up quickly. But this Ravens secondary is absolutely loaded. I mean, it is just absolutely loaded. Corners, safety, your top 7 is incredible. So I'll just read these guys off here. Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, Eddie Jackson, Nate Wiggins, to Tampa, Arthur Millette, Ardarius Washington, Pepe Williams, Jalen Davis, Sanusi Kane, and Bo Braid. And again, that's not including some of the other undrafted guys as well. But again, like you're talking about your top 4 corners in Humphrey, Stevens, and then you have Wiggins in Tampa. You have Arthur Millette as your slot guy, which is great. And then your safeties, it's Hamilton, Williams, Jackson, and Ardarius Washington. I love Ardarius Washington as the 4th safety. As the 3rd safety, it would have been okay, but him as the 4th safety, it just gives me so much confidence in that room. I expect Baltimore to keep 6 corners. I expect them to keep 5 safeties, 11 guys in their secondary. I could maybe see them cutting it down to 10 if they need another spot elsewhere, like on the offensive line, or maybe they want to keep another defensive lineman, edge guy, we'll see. But obviously the top 8 here, Humphrey, Stevens, Hamilton, Williams, Jackson, Wiggins, Tampa, those are all locks. Ardarius Washington, I'd be absolutely shocked if he did not make the roster. That is 9. And then I think there is a battle between Sanusi Kane and Bo Brave for that 5th safety spot. I think there is a battle between Pepe Williams and Jalen Armour Davis for that 6th corner spot, and that is how that's going to go. So 2 of Pepe Williams, Jalen Armour Davis, Sanusi Kane, and Bo Braid will make the team, and 2 of them will not, in my opinion. But we're getting into way early roster predictions so far here. So we'll get to that. Probably, honestly, not even that far in the future, probably in a couple weeks. But that just goes to show here, they're done in the secondary, in my opinion. They're done. They already have enough. This was the final piece of that. But in terms of the whole defense, like, yes, you could argue maybe a pass rusher. You could. The pass rush is a little concerning to me because, not concerned about Kyle Van Noy. I think that's fine. Odafe Owe, he's been solid for the Ravens. He needs to have a breakout year. Doesn't have to be quite to the level of Justin Madubuike's breakout year last year, but something close would certainly help. But then it's David Ajabo. It's Tavius Robinson, Adisa Isaac, Malik Ham. That's very unproven. And if one of those top 2 were to go down, if Van Noy or Owe were to go down, look, if Ajabo can stay healthy, I have a lot of confidence. I do. I think he's a really good player. I think he has, had a couple years to sit back and watch. He's still raw, and he'll need time. But I do have confidence in him based off of what we've seen in very limited snaps. But I do think they only keep 5 guys there. I think Malik Cam's off the roster. I think Adisa Isaac's going to be a game day inactive most weeks. So you're relying on Van Noy, Owe, Ajabo, and Tavius Robinson as your 4 edge guys. You can move guys around as well. Trenton Simpson can play there if you want to, and Malik Harrison can play there as well. And I don't know if there are necessarily a bunch of needle movers on the market at this point there. I mean, might maybe look at that, and that's a midseason trade spot potentially. I know that Yannick Ngakoue, I think, is still on the market, and that would not make a lot of Ravens fans happy. There are a couple guys, but I might just wait, see what you have there, because defensive line, you're set. We know that already. Inside linebacker, they're going to have to make some tough decisions. They're set there as well. The only other place I can see is the outside linebacker spot. The defense really flows nicely, assuming everything hits the way the Ravens want it to. And will that actually happen realistically? Probably not. There are going to be some positions here and some positions there that maybe they just don't get their expected return from their youth. But then there are going to be some positions where that exceeds expectations. So it's really the tale of both worlds there, where you're going to have some that works out and some that doesn't, where you're just relying on so much of it for this defense. But I do think based off of, one, the money they have left, which is not a ton, and we know Baltimore does like to bring some money into the season, whether it's for a trade or a potential surprise salary cap casualty. We do know that is a thing Baltimore likes to do, but it's just, again, it's so perfect for me. It is such a perfect fit here, where is Jackson a perfect player? No, nobody's a perfect player. I said that on yesterday's show. But sometimes there's just a skill set you need. And I'm glad Baltimore went this way instead of the other way, which was Jamal Adams. They had brought him in for a visit, and that was the other skill set. It was the box safety skill set. They didn't need that. They needed a single high skill set depth guy, and they got him in Eddie Jackson. And now that you have that piece in, you have a great defensive line room. You have a great inside linebacker room, assuming Trenton Simpson hits. Your cornerback room is awesome and deep. Your safety room is awesome and deep. The only real question is outside linebacker. That would be the one where if they added a vet, that would be the true final piece. But I think I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that Jackson was the final piece for this defense. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do add somebody else, and I'd be fine with that. But based off of how they have gone about their youth, Jackson is only the second biggest signing this offseason for the Ravens. Well, he's only the second free agent signing really for the Ravens, unless you want to include Josh Jones in there and a couple others. But Derrick Henry was the big one. Eddie Jackson was a decently sized one. And then, Josh Jones. And then a couple other guys here and there. That's really it. So, I mean, we'll see if they do anything else. It honestly might be the final piece for the team, if we're being honest. I mean, this might be the final big move we get until the season starts, where they could add a wide receiver, maybe an offensive lineman. But I think Jackson is that last move for a little while now, and that's fine, because I've got to kind of been preparing for that. I think a lot of people have, where they just love their youth. That's the route they're going. They know they have to go that route essentially, at least somewhat, with Lamar being on his big deal. So you know what? Okay, Eddie Jackson's in. They got the safety. That's great. I'm glad they did it. If they didn't, I'd still be pounding the table for the safety. But they got their guy, and hopefully it pans out for them in a good way. Coming up, though, we'll continue talking about Baltimore secondary, what Jackson brings to Baltimore as a whole, and getting into a bit of a training camp preview again as Baltimore vets report today. Stadium plan to talk about here on the show. First, the show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and there are plenty of times where some people can compare their lives to others, and social media really does play a part in that. And sometimes when I get caught up in that sort of thing, I just look at what I do have instead of what someone else has. And comparison is a thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. It might look like they have it all together on their Instagram, but in reality, they probably don't. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. And therapy has so many benefits, whether it's learning positive coping skills, how to set boundaries. It can empower you to become the best version of yourself. It is for those who experience major trauma. It's for everyone. If they're going to start in therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. We're back, our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you here on this Saturday. Eddie Jackson, officially a member of the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens signed him to a one-year deal yesterday afternoon. A big move for this secondary, and one that, again, does not break the bank. It is not a starting position they're giving Eddie Jackson. It is a depth piece. But Eddie Jackson, being a starter for so many years in Chicago, being a leader on that defense, he brings a lot of experience to the table, and a guy that can come in, and even though, again, he's not going to play the biggest role, assuming everything stays healthy, and that is hopefully the plan for the Ravens this season, although you can't really plan around health or anything. But eventually, Eddie Jackson here, I think, is going to make a big impact for this team. Now, hopefully, again, in a third safety role only. You hope Hamilton stays healthy. You hope Williams stays healthy. But that's why it's so big for me, because, again, all of the backlash is like, oh, well, Jackson he's not a starter anymore. Well, guess what? Ravens didn't sign him to be a starter. That fixes that. Doesn't matter. They didn't sign him to be a starter. So it's just like, what is the point? What is the point of doing that? A lot of teams, I feel like if they were in the same position as the Ravens, where some teams do still need safeties, but with the Ravens having 2 stars and then having essentially a pretty bare cupboard otherwise, outside of Ardarius Washington and his potential right now, Eddie Jackson is a perfect in-the-middle type of player. He has been there. He has done that. He has the experience. But you're not going to ask him to play 90% of snaps, which I know I said earlier in the show. So to me, what he brings to the table is a skill set that you needed with the ball hawking ability, your depth insurance, your injury insurance for Marcus Williams, someone who can play alongside those guys, because it's not just about fit if one guy goes down. It's about fit in the system with everybody healthy. Because, again, as I said earlier, positionless defense is becoming a huge thing. So unless you are a quarterback or you're an offensive lineman, even throughout football, not even defense, if you're a quarterback or an offensive lineman, yeah, starting position matters because you're playing 100% of the snaps, most likely. Any other position on the field, backups, quote-unquote backups, do get opportunities to play and play significant snaps even. And that's just not like, okay, if you're Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams, you're not playing 100% of snaps, and that's it for the entire season. Backups still get in. Depth pieces still get in, whether it's alongside those guys or for a breather at least. Quarterback and offensive line, those are the only 2 positions where that does not happen. Obviously, the Ravens did it last season with the offensive line. Did not help anything. You can't win a Super Bowl that way, in my opinion, but I digress. So it kind of felt like the writing was on the wall for Baltimore to go and bring in a safety at some point here. I would have been shocked if they didn't. I knew they were talking up Ardarius Washington the way that they were, but it didn't seem plausible to me. Geno Stone was great in that spot duty over these past 2 seasons, and Ardarius Washington could have very well been that guy for them. I'm not trying to discount what he can bring to the table and what his skill set is as well. But with the Ravens here, the vet was the best option because, again, it takes away from Washington as the third safety, I guess. but he still will have opportunities, I believe, to play this season and make an impact. And this is a one-year deal. So if Darius Washington, again, impresses in the preseason, impresses in whatever action he has in 2024, he could slot into that role here. But Washington has been injured. He does not have a ton of NFL experience here. And for Geno Stone, he was somebody that at least saw the field a little bit before he had to fill in for Marcus Williams. So I feel like at this point, the Stone hole was the biggest hole left on the roster. You could argue a couple other things as well, but to me, that was it. Because I have preached this everywhere, shouted it from the rooftops. The reason why the Ravens defense was so good last season was because their depth was incredible all across the board. But the two I point to all the time, Ronald Darby filling in for Marlon Humphrey and him having a great fill-in, right? Marlon goes down, Darby just slots right in there and does a great job. And then it was Geno Stone for Marcus Williams. And that's where, if you're a defense that doesn't have a lot of quality depth, some of your stars go down and the replacement level is just so far off of what your star is, you lose steps, you lose multiple abilities, and you lose the ability to do things that makes your defense good in some rates. Now, the biggest loss on this defense for the Ravens would be Kyle Hamilton, followed by Roquan Smith, just based off of skill set and positional value and everything of that nature. You can flip-flop them if you want to, but to me, now you have depth everywhere. Right now you have depth everywhere, whether it is young and unproven, like the outside linebacker group with Ajabo and Robinson and Isaac and everybody, or you have a bunch of vets like the defensive line room with Michael Pierce, Brent Urban, and all those guys to fill in as well with the youth there. So this is great. And again, I kind of talked about it, I think in the first or second, I can't remember exactly when I talked about it. I talked about it yesterday, but the Ravens and waiting out the market, still a lot of guys left too. But I expect with Justin Simmons, him to get some level of starter money and a starter role. And I just don't think the Ravens could have offered that. I think it would have been awesome if they could have made it work. But Jackson is, I think, just a more perfect fit, even though Simmons is the better player. I'm not trying to deny Simmons is better than Jackson at this point. He is. He's a heck of a player. But so is Jackson when used in the right role. And sometimes it's just a change of scenery is what's needed, or just going to a contending team. I know the Bears weren't uber competitive during Jackson's tenure over there, but sometimes that's what it is. Again, we were having these conversations about Jadeveon Clowney last offseason, about Kyle Van Noy, Arthur Millette, Ronald Darby. How much do these guys have left in the tank? Is their skill set really translatable to Baltimore's defense? What type of role are they going to play? We all had questions about it, right? We didn't know. We knew these guys had experience. We knew they had solid track records overall for the most part, but they were getting up there in age. The role wasn't as big for them, and they had kind of had down seasons here and there. But Baltimore has done this time and time again of, I don't want to say fixing veterans, but giving veterans opportunities to succeed. And in the environment of Baltimore football, both on the field and off of the field, they take advantage of it. The system is great for a lot of different skill sets, you know, especially defensively, and obviously offensively, they're still working through it. But it is a great system defensively to be in, and they have maintained that system from Zach Gore to Mike McDonald to Don Martindale to Dean Pease, et cetera, et cetera. That system goes back a long way, just with different iterations in it. And we have seen so many vets come in on their second to last deals in the league or their last deals in the league and have that one last hurrah or go off and earn a bigger contract like Jadeveon Clowney did here. And so if you're a vet and you want a chance to win and you want a chance to maybe rebuild your value a little bit, and especially this late in the offseason, yeah, you know what? You might want to come to Baltimore to see what you can do. So I think it was a mutual decision, you know, something that both parties were kind of feeling out throughout the offseason most likely, and timing just ended up working out for both of them. So exciting, great move. Again, this is a shrewd move by DeCosta and company. I give the organization an A for this one. Really excited to see how it'll pan out for him this season. Training camp again for the Ravens today. Vets report. Practices start on Sunday. So we'll be back tomorrow with a bonus episode. We'll be talking more Eddie Jackson, but also diving into, of course, training camp, what to expect, make or break training camps for certain players. So This is fun. This is fun. If this is your first season with Locked On Ravens here with me, first of all, thank you for tuning in and for trusting me with your Ravens content. We do 5 days a week here, Monday through Friday. Plus, again, these bonus episodes go live after every single piece of Ravens big news, and just games in general go live after every single Ravens game. If you're an everydayer, appreciate your support and you tune in each and every day. And you're somewhere in the middle, thank you for your support as well. Coming up again tomorrow, we'll have another bonus episode for you on Sunday, so be sure to stay tuned to see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.